It was the year 2014 when everything changed.
Right. So dramatic. It really was a lot of maybe coincidences put together, and things like we started thinking differently, maybe because we had a kid. We started thinking more about the future, and a lot of things just changed in our lives.
We are Red Weather Christians.
I'm Steve.
And I'm Jen. Thanks for pressing play today. There are a lot of podcasts out there, and you chose ours.
Did you say this last time?
No.
Oh, okay.
Just because I type things out doesn't mean it's exactly the same every episode, jerk. Anyway, we are honored that you guys are here. This is episode 12, and thanks for sticking with us, you guys. We love it.
Yes. I mean, we would do this without you, but thanks.
That wouldn't be very much fun. Anyway, back to the script. We're here uncovering doubts, wading through disillusionment, and teasing through our own faith one episode at a time.
And without further ado, today's episode is money.
Again!
Right. So in 2014, a lot of things started to change for us. That was the last year I coached soccer, mainly because I felt I was getting home way too late in the winter season, and I wasn't home for my kid until after dark. And that wasn't good enough. And that led into some other things. But keep in mind, our lives were great.
Yeah, we were really happy with where we were at. You know, we had a kid, we had dogs, we had secure jobs, we had a great nanny situation. And you know what? Our mindset wasn't really, hey, let's sit down and figure out our financial situation for the future. We were just kind of living in a place where we were going to work indefinitely.
And that wasn't terrible. We liked what we were doing. But we also started to think, okay, how can we make the money that we have work for us in better ways?
Yeah, and how can we have a clear end goal of maybe when we might stop working, if that's what we want to do?
So the first thing we did was we realized we had most of our money in our house because we inherited some money.
So when my mom died, she, if you remember, I'm an only child. So I got a chunk of money, and, Steve and I did some things with the money, like actually used the money kind of at the time. We had a porch built onto the back of our house, a screened-in porch, which was really lovely. But also it enabled us to do some investing. And so Steve and I did need to sit down and kind of talk about, all right, what do we want to do here? Where do we want to put this money so that it can do good things?
Right. So that's why, without much thinking, we put it all into the mortgage and paid off the house. So then the bulk of our money was sitting in our house, and we realized, hey, we can probably do one of those cash out refinances and go buy another property and maybe start a rental property side income.
Right. And because in 2014, we just started having these kinds of thoughts, and something seemed to be brewing inside of us, like, we need to think about things more, and we need to think about our money more. The idea of making money outside of what we were doing Monday through Friday at our jobs was appealing, because more and more we were thinking about life beyond working a Monday through Friday, kind of a 9-to-5 type of job.
So we began a search for a rental property in March of that year. I specify these months because certain things transpire through 2014, and we just want to make it clear we had this great idea before we read anything.
Yes, because there's kind of another little turning point coming here.
So we went down that route. We put an offer in a house. We basically went through that. It was short sales and things like that. We were looking for distressed properties to make them better and then rent them out. So that was the basic plan of it. But
dun, dun, dun.
Partway through that, in the summer, we hadn't closed a deal yet because short sales aren't always so short, if you've ever done one of those. I stumbled upon this blog called Mr. Money Mustache. I actually stumbled across it from some other link that had connected his article about the true cost of commuting.
So Steve read this article, and I don't know what to say. He became almost instantly incredibly intrigued by what this guy had to say. Non-Christian guy, might I add.
Right. And that's where we're looking at this. It's kind of distant from the church. In fact, some of his articles would question someone who tithes to the church if you still have debt or things like that. So definitely not Christian, not getting that vibe, not getting that perspective, but getting really sound financial advice. So I read all about this stuff. The true cost of commuting said basically bike everywhere you possibly can or walk, live close to your job. Well, we already checked one of those off and we biked to work, but we weren't fully on board with everything revolving around bikes. The other thing that came with this, other than just the true cost of commuting, was some book recommendations from him, which was Your Money or Your Life by Vicky Robin and Joe Dominguez. And basically looking at your expenses, looking at your money, looking at what you're doing with your money and evaluating it. Because when it says your money or your life, it's talking about time. And we've always heard the phrase that time is money. But when you start to evaluate it, when you start thinking, okay, I make $25 an hour, this item costs $50, that's 2 hours of my working life that I'm giving up for whatever this item is.
Yeah, and we had already been thinking about how we were kind of getting ready to maybe be done working. Maybe not both of us, but one of us, and to stay home with our kid and spend that time with our kid instead of being at work. So as I mentioned, things were already brewing, but this idea, Steve read all these articles, but one thing that I kept hearing kind of loud and clear is the idea of being content with less. Now, I've heard messages like this from the church. Things like, don't let your possessions become your idols. We've heard that message a lot of times, and I resonate with that. I think it's really great. But the disconnect for us was, I guess we didn't really see it playing out in people's lives. We heard it on Sunday mornings from the pulpit, but then, I don't know, we didn't really see it happening in real life. IRL.
Okay. Anyway, just in case you wanted to get the text version of the podcast. Yeah.
Ooh.
Okay, so yeah, basically we've heard things like this from the church about contentment. Here are a couple verses you might have heard. This one comes from Hebrews 13, verse 5. Keep your lives free from the love of money and be content with what you have. Sounds pretty good.
Yeah, I like that. Simple.
Another one I'm pulling this out of context, but the rest of the context is also very good. This comes from 1 Timothy 6, verse 8. But if we have food and clothing, we will be content with that. Okay, I mean, people might need a little bit more than that to be content, but okay, I like it.
Yeah. A little more maybe. Perhaps that's a little bit simplistic.
But the idea is, and from the Mr. Money Mustache side of things, was quit being a consumer sucker. I mean, stop buying crap you don't need.
Yeah. And Steve and I have had arguments about my spending, more so earlier in our marriage, because I like to spend money and I like things and I like clothes and shoes and expensive sunglasses.
Shoes and sunglasses, definitely.
So I remember very early on. I mean, this was probably when we were dating. We were maybe at the mall together or whatever. Again, another mall reference, not in the food court this time, but just shopping or whatever. And it was being with Steve shopping was awful. It was just such a horrible experience because anytime I was like, oh, that's cute. I feel like I would really use that, or that's something that I would really like.
Waste of money.
Oh, yeah. And it was so extreme. And he would say it like that too, like when we were in the store. And I would get so irritated. I was just like, you won't allow me to be happy buying anything. And it was a point of contention in our marriage. And I will say this. We both changed. He got better at just, I don't even like using the word letting because it's not like you control my life, but just like being okay with purchases that I made and not giving me grief. But then I just naturally, or I don't know, maybe I was influenced by Steve. I just started enjoying shopping less. And I think maybe it was just, my maturing.
Sure, call what you want, but I kept telling you I don't care what you wear. I'll still like you.
Right. That's the other part of it. Steve. Oh, Steve. If you know him, you know. He doesn't really care about style or fashion or what's trendy or anything like that. And I don't care a whole lot, but I do care, definitely more than he does. I also remember earlier in our marriage, he would wear some outfits and I would be legitimately embarrassed going out with him.
Well,
Luckily, I still loved you.
that's what you get. I can assure you that my outfits cost very little money.
But listen, Steve, in all seriousness, I really do appreciate that you just simply do not care what other people think. You have that kind of confidence, and I don't think that's something I will really ever have. So I do love being married to a very confident person. That is lovely.
I mean, I'm wearing Abominable Snowman pants right now.
Yes, you are. And a Bluth's Frozen Banana Stand t-shirt.
Yeah, both great. Both great things. Do they go together? I don't know. Doesn't matter.
I mean, let's just be clear. This is not an outfit he would wear outside the house. This is pajama pants, okay?
Sure, but I wouldn't be ashamed to wear this outside of the house.
You wouldn't be a little embarrassed?
I do what I want.
Oh my gosh.
Anyway, so we're talking about money and what happened in 2014 after reading and diving into Mr. Money Mustache. He also had a great concept that I had never thought about,
Da, da, da.
which is fire. Well, two ways he talks about this.
It's lit.
Fire is financial independence, retire early. And I was like, oh my gosh, wait a second. I can retire early? Like, I don't even have to do anything?
Yeah, we were not in this mindset at all. We certainly had never heard anything like this from the church. And you know what? Listen, churches, for all you churches out there listening, it would be so nice to, continue, the sermons about stuff not becoming idolatrous. I think that is a good thing. But what if we could talk a little bit about work becoming idolatrous as well? Because you know that it is. You know that people can get to the point of worshiping their work. And it doesn't even feel like that, I don't think. But just the idea of this is my life, this is my identity, and wrapping so much of who we are into our jobs and putting so much time into our jobs. What is it that you always say about time and like our resources?
Finite.
Time is finite.
For us.
Yes. And so how you spend your time is really important.
Yeah. So the idea of retiring early now is at the forefront of my mind. So I create a 10-year plan where Jen and I will work for 10 more years, save the maximum. That means, yes, this gets a little nerdy for you, but sock away the maximum amount allowed into our 403B. It was a nonprofit organization, so 403B instead of 401k. So we socked away the maximum amount possible. The people that I would do this with in the HR office thought I was crazy. Like, wait, the maximum or just the maximum match that our company would offer you? No, all $18,000 a year. Yes. So it made it look like we made less. We actually did take home less, but it was, a tax-free investment in our future retirement. Great thing. And that plan, when I thought it up, would get us to, getting 10 years down the road, our oldest would be right about 13.
So when we were sitting down talking about this and we were saying, okay, Asher's going to be 13 years old when this happens and when we can retire early and, he would still be going to school or whatever, but we would definitely be spending more time with him if we're not working. I said to Steve, okay, I work with a lot of teenagers, predominantly 14-year-olds, 14 and 15-year-olds. Well, at the time I did. I said, could we flip this around a little bit, tweak it maybe a little bit so that one of us stays home with him earlier before he's a teenager and potentially, as some teenagers do, not all, but as some teenagers do, hate their parents. We don't know if that's going to happen. I hope that it doesn't, But I've worked with a lot of teenagers, so I just wanted to maybe take some time before he was a teenager.
Right. So my 10-year plan, we got 3 years into the 10-year plan and finally decided, hey, we've got another kid. And if they don't like us when they're teenagers, why do we want to be home all the time when they're teenagers? That might not be good. It might be better if we were doing something.
Yeah, and they love us now.
Yeah, they definitely still like us.
Yeah, you know that stage of parenting where your kids think you're heroes? Yeah, that's what we were thinking.
We wanted to capitalize on that. So, like I said, 3 years into the 10-year plan that I had made, I decided to resign, even though I had a great, stable, secure job.
Yeah, and I continued working for a couple of reasons. I liked my job more than Steve liked his job. And also, if we're just being totally honest here, Steve resigning and then maybe needing to get another job at some point, it's just easier for him to get another job because he is in the math science realm.
We've mentioned this before. Yeah. And on top of just getting a whole nother job, which would be easier for me, I can also pick up tutoring on the side. So if Jen comes home, I can go tutor after school because people need and will pay for math tutors.
We also did have a sit-down chat about, okay, well, we're going to be bringing in less money. How are we going to deal with that? How's that going to change our lives? And just kind of the idea of learning to live with less. And we decided that we would go for it. We would choose to live with less money, but more of other things like time with our kid.
Right. And there are other advantages to making less money. I know that sounds weird, but it does make you aware of your money a little bit more. When we made double salaries, we could kind of make choices, really bad choices, and it didn't hurt us very much, which isn't good.
Right. I think it's really important to be aware of your spending habits, of course.
And that's one of the big things that Mr. Money Mustache would, I say preach. He was obviously not a pastor, but he would preach these things in his blog that check your spending. It's the easiest thing to cut. It just is. Look at what you waste money on. If you're wasting too much money on gas, bike more, move closer, whatever it is. So that was a big thing. The other thing that I could do, and this is just a fun thing. I had started to do this because I got through the forums associated with Mr. Money Mustache. I had got the idea of signing up for credit cards and bank accounts for the bonuses.
Yeah, and you might think, oh, that's abusing the system or whatever. But, these companies, these credit card companies, these banks give these sign-up bonuses. And if we are completely playing by the rules and we're also benefiting, that's kind of where we were at with this. So Steve, this was like totally Steve's side hustle.
Yes. If you'd like to know, I could make over $3,000 a year with bank account and credit card sign-up bonuses.
Now, the old adage of it takes money to make money is certainly true. So I was still bringing in an income. So a lot of these bank accounts bonuses required a direct deposit, which I could provide. And so we understand not everybody is in that kind of position to be able to do that. But the way we finagled it was that I was still working, I was still bringing in income. So if it needed that direct deposit, I could provide that. And the people in the business office at my school, oh boy, did they know us well. They sure did. I just tried to be as nice to them as possible. It's like, would you mind signing this paper again for the 20th time? They were like, oh my gosh, what are you guys doing?
I told them exactly what I was doing, and they were okay with it because they can't tell me I can't. That was really what it was. And also, as far as spending money to make money, the credit card bonuses, just to be clear, be transparent, usually had a spending requirement. So you spend $1,000 on their credit card with your new credit card, you get $200 back or $250 or $100 or $150. I usually wouldn't go for a bonus unless it was over $100. But that being said, I have a tax bill coming and it's $1,500 tax bill and there's a $300 bonus for a $1,500 spend. Yeah, all right, sign me up.
Yes. So between my income and Steve's side hustles, tutoring and sign-up bonuses, we were doing just fine for ourselves.
Yes, we were content. In fact, one of the other things that Mr. Money Mustache talks about is that he lives a life of luxury. And I think we all need to look around ourselves, our house, the things we have. And even if you're listening to this, you probably are living a life of ridiculous luxury. When I say ridiculous, I mean, think about it. We have shelter, heat, air conditioning, entertainment, all at our fingertips.
Yeah. Beds, sheets, blankets, clothes.
Delicious foods. It's not all the same. You have lots of variety of foods to choose from. I mean,
You probably have a car, probably 2, 3, maybe.
you probably have a bike, which is a great luxury, a great tool.
Yeah.
If you use it.
Yeah. I can't help when we're talking about all this to think about, and I'm so sorry to have to bring it up, but social media. And, I think about the influencers on social media, and I think about the Christian influencers on social media. And, it's not that different from what I see. And you might have a different perspective, you being the listeners, because Steve certainly doesn't have probably an opinion on this.
Don't care.
But I don't see much difference except in their little bio where it says something like, love Jesus, Jesus lover, this and that. Otherwise, it's really similar as far as, keeping up with the Joneses kind of idea as far as what you're wearing, what you look like, your house, your decor, even your kids. I have noticed more and more that the kids are being brought into social media as something that's like new and different because, kids are growing up. That's the thing about social media for Christians and non-Christians alike, is that the algorithm dictates that if you don't have new and different, new and different, new and different, new and different all the time, you're not going to get the traffic that you would quote unquote need as an influencer to make any money or do whatever it is that you're trying to do. So it is tough. We're living in a world that is telling us we need more and we need it to be different all the time. It's exhausting keeping up with that. And it's expensive keeping up with all of that.
Yeah, so just to keep everyone up to date with what's going on, I became a stay-at-home dad. So yes, I was taking care of my kids. We had 2 of them. Oldest was 5, the youngest was 2, which some people don't want that life. Taking care of toddlers is not easy. It's exhausting in a different way.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
But it was still better to be there. And again, we had a great nanny. We were content, but we also knew that this was life for us.
Yeah. And, again, that old saying, the days are long, but the years are short. I can't tell you how many times I've thought about that. And I wasn't even the one staying at home during these years. Steve was. But it was still kids. Oh, man, they're a lot. They're a lot of work.
Well, we also decided at that time because I didn't want to be beholden to a schedule. That was one of the other keys for me staying home, that I decided to homeschool my kids. Well, really, that just meant homeschool the oldest because the other one was just learning to walk and talk and stuff. So we did the homeschool route, which can also be a complete money pitfall.
Yes. And going back to social media, this is something I see on there with these kind of Christian influencers, if you will. They are, I don't know if maybe they're being sponsored, perhaps, but they are kind of advocating for these really expensive homeschool programs. Because I've looked them up sometimes. I'm like, that looks amazing. That looks so cute. Like, oh my gosh, it has this big focus on nature and being active. And then you look up what the actual curriculum costs and you're like, oh my gosh, that's a lot. And it's, I feel like it's a bit of a trap for Christians, non-Christians alike, but it just seems like in our experience, we've known more Christians who homeschool. But anyway, yeah, I think it's a trap. You feel like if I'm going to homeschool, I have to buy this really expensive curriculum. Otherwise, I'm going to be a failure. And that is just a lie.
Yeah, absolutely not. You can't live up to that expectation that the book is going to teach it. So Asher learned how to read using bananagrams. Great game. And he learned a lot of math when we played cards. I would make up games where you'd just have to do the matching game. Like, okay, if you can find a match that adds up to 6, you get that match. So we would just do all the cards in the deck that would add up to 6, put them face down. Simple little things like that, just to give you ideas if you're a homeschool parent.
Yeah, and going back to the focus of this episode, as far as being content with less, I think it applies really well with homeschooling. I think that we have to have a lot of resources and worksheets and activities to do a good job teaching our kids. And I just don't think that's the case. If you can muster up a little creativity, be interactive with your kid, play lots of games, talk to each other, go outside on nature hikes, it's pretty simple. Let's learn to be content with less.
Right. I will mention that I had my mom's old curriculum, though I was in the public school system most of my life. In the summers, we would do this, and I think she had plans to use this homeschool stuff. But I have all that now, or most of it, and I did use it.
Super old stuff. What was the year on that you saw?
Like 70-something.
Oh, my gosh.
And I will say there was only one little problem with that, and that was when it would have certain antiquated terms.
Like petticoat?
Blouse.
I mean, yeah, people don't really use that word anymore.
So that was the only thing. Asher would get stuck on this word. I'm like, I don't even know. Let me check the answer key. Oh, there's no way you'd know that word. I barely know that word.
Yeah.
Anyway, so yeah, we were just content knowing that if you put time and effort into your kid, they're going to learn things. They're going to learn life.
Gosh, talk about a good investment. There it is right there.
And some may argue, what about the socialization? We'd be on campus, at school campus. He'd see his friends.
Yeah, well, Steve would teach chess for the little after-school chess club and do various things still at school. I mean, you guys would go to the park and stuff too.
Oh, yeah. Lots of biking to the playground. And most of, again, that what I did as a stay-at-home dad was free entertainment for the kids, which goes in line with what we are talking about, being content with less. I didn't need to have expensive games for them. We just go to the park, and then they would figure out, which park are we going to? Well, that would depend on a couple other factors, like, hey, where am I going to pick up that next free bike from Craigslist?
Oh, that's, yeah, yet another side hustle of Steve's. He would buy bikes, fix them up, and sell them for profit.
Or just find them for free.
Right.
Fix them up, and then sell them for profit. Yes.
Steve was busy.
But never too busy. And I was doing what I wanted to do. But bringing it back to where the church sits with this and Christianity in general, here's where we have some questions. And there are other verses like this, but here's just one example. This is in Proverbs 13:21. Misfortune pursues the sinner, but prosperity is the reward of the righteous.
Ooh, that's weird because that makes it seem like if you are in poverty,
you're a sinner.
Yeah, I don't like that.
Right. There are some other ways you can interpret this that also make it seem bad. That what if you're not prosperous, but you feel like you're righteous, then you must be a sinner? Or what if you know someone who's righteous, but they're not prosperous, or something befalls them and you're like, misfortune, they must have done something sinful. Read the whole book of Job, you'll basically get that whole scenario.
But there are other verses in the Bible that we really like from Psalm 24:1. It says, "The earth is the Lord's and everything in it, the world and all who live in it." I think this is a great reminder of, not taking things too seriously when it comes to my money. I just hear things a lot about my money and my money that I earned. And when you don't think of it that way, it's kind of oddly freeing. And I think that it does lend itself to our being able to live a life in a more content manner.
Right. So as we wrap this up, I'm going to make a couple other book recommendations, or at least one recommendation and one. And that is because, again, coming from the Christian community, you've already heard us talk about Dave Ramsey, but that's kind of the predominant name and face that goes with financial independence or financial peace, if you'd rather. But I read a much better book. Fantastic book. In fact, I read a lot of financial books, both secular and Christian, and I came across this one. It was sent to me for free by one of my bank account bonus signups. It was Managing God's Money by Randy Alcorn. I had such low expectations for this book.
Why did you have low expectations of this book?
1, it was about money. 2, it's from a Christian author. 3, it was a Christian book.
Oh, gosh. It's so sad. That's so sad.
I mean, look, you read a lot of books, Jen.
I do.
Would you say, on average, that the quality of Christian literature is higher or lower than that of secular literature?
Well, you're putting me on the spot here, Stephen. Yeah, if I had to give a blanket statement, yeah, Christian literature is typically lower.
And some of you might think of this as Christian movies, anything like that, also of lesser quality because they usually have lower budgets. But again, I go back to this book and it blew me away, partly because it was better than most of the other financial books that I had read, and it addressed some of the main concerns I had with the problems within the church itself and how we deal with money. Fantastic book. I say that to contrast it with the Dave Ramsey book I read, I read The Total Money Makeover. It was one that I found in the library. It's like, okay, I got to read it so that I can accurately hate on it.
Oh my goodness, Stephen.
I mean, but that's because it's pure numbers. Like, if you want to go into it, we can. But I'll just go with the quote from the book that is most often used, which is, if you will live like no one else, later you can live like no one else. I mean, he does advocate for you to cut spending, which is great, and to look at your expenses and reduce them so that maybe you're eating a lot more meals of beans and rice, which I think is fantastic, by the way. But no one else does that because people are living some extravagant life. My problem with this is the latter half of the statement,
which is, later you can live like no one else.
Why would you care? Does that mean you're going to have bundles of money that now you can live like a rich fool?
I mean, is it like a comparison thing? Like, I'm better than you? Because that doesn't seem Christian-like.
No, not at all. No, you should be living life right now, for starters, and you should be living a way that everyone wants to live like you.
Maybe he's talking about live like no one else in the sense that you're able to be really generous with your money, because that could be a really great thing.
There are other interpretations that go that route.
Well, I'm going to interpret it that way.
Either way, there are some flaws with his style and with his methods. So I would highly suggest Randy Alcorn's book instead, Managing God's Money. Basically, what it comes down to for us is we are content with our place in life. We don't make a lot of money, but we have plenty of it now, which is nice. You're listening to this for free, ad-free, because we don't expect money from this.
We are making some assumptions about who's listening, and we are assuming that you have enough money. And so, yes, we're talking to you. We're wanting to tell you to try to take a look at what you have in life and see it as a luxury instead of looking at what other people have and seeing all these things that you don't have that you feel you need. Because chances are you don't need them.
Right. And if you are disappointed in this episode because you want some solid investment advice, yeah, that might come in another episode.
Oh, man. Money part 3.
Yeah. So what we're saying, of course, is be content with what you have. But also don't be content in the way that the one guy in Jesus' parable buried what his master gave him. You still want to invest in things
so that you're in a place where you have the ability and resources to be generous and to give.
So in that parable, one of the talents, the one who is given one goes and buries it because he thinks his master is, a hard man, very shrewd. And the master goes, "Oh my gosh, you wicked, lazy servant. You knew that I harvest where I have not sown and gather where I should not scatter seed. You should have put my money on deposit with the bankers so at least I earned interest." And everything that was his, the talent that he had been given, was taken from him. The other two, who had invested it somehow, were told, "Well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful with a few things. I will put you in charge of many things. Come and share your master's happiness." So yes, as Jen was saying, we kind of assume that if you're listening to this, you've been blessed with many things, with much. And our whole statement here is be content with that, but not too content. As in, don't just let it sit for your good. Invest it. Make it better.
We are Red Weather Christians.
I'm Steve.
And I'm Jen.
Leave no doubt unturned.
Until next time. you're enjoying Red Weather Christians, we sure would appreciate it if you would share with your friends or rate us on Apple Podcasts. It will help us reach more people. More people means a richer conversation. A richer conversation hopefully leads to more action. And it's time that there's more action in Christian communities to make our world a better place. Thanks for listening.